Okay, so I've got something that I'd like to show everybody today. And I feel like this is going to be a really great hour. I feel like, I did a presentation that's like the one I'd like to make to you today about 9 months ago. And I was not able to fully express the type of preparation I like to see within a week time period and a month time period than I am right now. I don't feel like I was prepared the last time I made this type of presentation compared to the type of preparation I made for today. So, and it kind of like we did last week, there's going to be a period where I'm going to show you a PowerPoint, and it's going to be pretty detailed. And I'll actually do my best. I think it's going to be really possible for me to just put it on Slack. But if I can't put it on Slack, I'll email it to everybody. And I want to show you kind of how I balance out a week of training. I'm just like everybody else in the sense that I've got, let's take my top group. I've got 22 athletes. Now, out of those athletes, I've got 3 of them that are not only good at the 50, but not only is their best event the 50, but they're also very good at the 50. They're among the best swimmers in the state at the 50. Meaning, if my best 50 swimmers weren't at a top level, I might not put them into a separate group unless I coached a college team, right, Phil? You got to have your 50 people in a different group if you coach a college team, no matter what. But on a club team, you don't. If people show promise in that, like I've seen people that have moved to my team with promise in the 50, as state champions, they moved to my team. I'm going to keep coaching them as well as I can to go a fast 50. Then I've got another group of athletes that's about 6 to 8 deep that specialize in the mile, 1,000, 400 IM. I think everybody's got this, right? Everybody's got the same thing, and then everybody else in the middle swims in the middle. So what I'd like to show you today is going to have 2 parts. It's going to have the preparation for basically that middle and how I balance out the training throughout a week and then throughout the month. Things are going to be hopefully pretty clear at first, but then as we go through each slide, it's going to get more and more clear as to what I'm trying to do. And hopefully at the end of this, there's going to be some questions and some thoughts about what it is that I'm going to put out there. The second part is going to be, what are we doing with the distance people and the sprinters within that template that I'm going to show you to kind of tweak it so that we get the necessary workout of them. The goal for me when I'm coaching my group of 22 athletes with all these various things is to have a week where if I looked at each person individually, I could say, if they're a distance swimmer, well, they got 3 really good cardio workouts and at least 1 good speed workout. That's 4, and I'll take a lot more, but if they got that, great. Sprinters, I'm going to say, if they get 1 good cardio workout and they get 3 really good pace workouts, 2 of them freestyle, I'm going to feel really good about that. If they're in the middle, then I'm going to be thinking about, well, if they get 2 cardio workouts and then 2 or 3 really good speed workouts in different strokes if they're an IMer. They didn't have a good breaststroke workout last week, have a good one this week. I'm going to be looking for these types of things. And I think it's important to understand that on a day where we might be doing some breaststroke, for instance, it's a fitness workout for my freestylers and maybe sort of a recovery day. If it's not physical, at least sort of mental. I think everybody knows what I'm talking about with that. So just those are some kind of givens within the scenario. So I'm going to share the screen and let's put this up here. Okay. And I'm going to go to a slideshow. Hopefully you guys can see it and see. What do you guys see on the side? Maybe a couple groups, a couple coaches on the side, that kind of thing? Okay, great. All right, so let's go through it here. So many of you, I'm sure, saw what I posted on Slack. What I did was I made this. If you look at my screen, I made this thing. But in the process of making it, I took a picture at each stage. And so then I put the picture on each of these PowerPoint slides so that we can go through it in an intelligent way. So this is basically how, I run an 18 and under, mainly high school age, United States club team, right? So I'm going to work all the strokes. This is an example of basically how I put the strokes through a month. This is a pretty simple, basic thing. We'll go to the next slide. Then I'm going to go through, this is my basic week. Now, it's not only the basic week that I do, but the Monday and the Tuesday, I think, are really traditional USA Swimming, days. There's a lot of coaches, Coach Bowman, who I learned a lot from, included, that will start the week with an aerobic thing and then an active rest thing. I'm not saying he's doing that right now and every week, but I'm saying that that's the feel that I got from coaching with him for a year. And I can say that Coach John Urbanchik is certainly somebody that I like to think about tailoring the way I do things off of, where the Monday is an aerobic day and the Tuesday is an active rest day. Now, we do a Wednesday kick drill swim day. That is kind of I really feel it's a North Baltimore Aquatic Club type style of set. It's a style of set that incorporates kicking and drilling and swimming, and you'll see as we go through some of the workouts how that'll change. Then we go back to a Thursday, kind of going through the same cycle again, but instead of using Friday as an active rest day, I just put it onto the Saturday and use Friday as a kicking day. It's a shorter day. On to the next slide. So this is a basic idea about what the workouts might be. So, and just kind of an example, this slide doesn't show you much because the whole point of this discussion is to talk about like how each workout relates to each other. So you can just kind of take a look. I just picked some different things that I might start, a month with. And there we go. Okay, so let's actually just go on to the next slide, because then you're going to really see kind of how I might balance things out. Now, you can look at the writing if you'd like to, but just notice, I'll kind of talk through what the writing is all about, and kind of notice how things are balanced out. So if you take the Monday on the second week, the 300s that we're doing that are IM are going to balance out the distance of the previous week's 200s and also the 150s from the previous aerobic workout. So, really, if you look at the way it's coded in color, I just did that to make it easier to see. And you can see on there, use my cursor, the aerobic workouts are all Monday, Thursday. The 300s here are going to balance out the distance on those 200s and 150s, meaning we're not going to do the same set over again. We're not going to touch the same distance. We're going to bring it up a little bit. Okay, so Tuesdays, we're going to go some 200s, and that clearly balances the really speedy 25s from the week before. On Wednesday, doing the 50s and doing them backstroke balances not only in the stroke that we're doing, but in the style of kick drill swim set from the previous Wednesday. So the first Wednesday, let's go through that set. It's 2100s, it's on 140. You do a 75 on 105. That's got some kicking and some drilling of your stroke, in this case, backstroke. And then you do a 25 on 35. You do that 20 times. It's a backstroke set. It's got some pretty continuous work, like a 75 on 105, earn some rest, and then pop something. Whereas the 3650s, there's going to be some more rest in there, doing a backstroke, or I have it listed back kick, back drill, back swim. That's a mistake as I'm looking at it on the circle here. Should be breaststroke since it's a breaststroke day, but it's a change up of the stroke, and it's a change up of the distance and really how fast the expectations are for the athletes to swim. Okay, so let's move on to the Thursday. The 100s I've got on that second week Thursday are going to balance, again, the 300s, 150s, and the 200s. So each aerobic workout is kind of like linked together as we go through these first couple days, first couple weeks. And then the Friday, the kicking set, is now kind of like an active rest set, whereas the previous week was an aerobic set. So we'll do 10 100s. That's really like 1,000. That's kind of broken. Some athletes are going to get 6 seconds rest, right? And just keep going. And then the next week, they're going to go a 50 swim freestyle on 50. Presumably, they're going to get 15 to 20 seconds rest every time. And then they're going to pop a 50, get a little bit of rest, and do that a bunch of times. It's a completely different style of set, and the body is going to be really ready in that kicking set to respond, particularly after having done the 10-100s the previous week. Okay, so now just so everybody knows, the pictures that I've got on my screen are covering my Saturdays, but I actually have it right here in my hand so I can see it pretty easy. Okay, so the Saturday, the active rest set that we're doing on that second week, you can tell that it's like a longer set, right? It's like 400s. It's three 400s with 100 easy. It's 3 200s with 100 easy. Now, that really is different than the Saturday before, where we're doing some 75s fast at the top of each round. Basically, we've got 8 75s fast. Now, as you'll see later on in this presentation, the Saturdays, we'll have some different people doing some different things at times. So not everybody is going to be perhaps doing the 75s, but most people will be. And for them, that's kind of like a mental break to go from Saturday, where it's like pretty sprint-oriented, shorter distances, to a little bit longer, a little bit tougher set, where maybe it's, you know, a bigger group that's doing the set together. So there's, you know, in some ways we're balancing out the workouts and the strokes, but in some ways we're balancing out kind of the psychological aspect of training for the athletes. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So this is the third week. Now, this is where things I think get a little bit, you know, really interesting. So now we've got a Monday where we're back to an aerobic day, and we've done a freestyle day, we've done an IM day, the 8-300s. They could be back breast free, or they could be IM. They could really be any style of IM, right? Now we're gonna, having done freestyle on the Saturday with a lot of people and freestyle the previous Thursday, we're gonna balance that out and come back with backstroke on Monday. Now, if you look at it, it sort of looks like an active rest set. You're doing 100 freestyle and then 100 backstroke. But the idea is that the 100 free would be on short enough rest where it'd be like 100 free cruise, 100 backstroke fast. So it's just different style of aerobic set. I think that if the interval's fast enough on the freestyle part, the set stays aerobic. Okay, so then we go to Tuesday. Now we're coming back to what is really one of my favorite sets, the 75 set that we did the previous Saturday. We did it with, see, we did that with backstroke on the previous Saturday. Now we're going to come back and do it with breaststroke. And that particular breaststroke set of doing the 75s is going to balance out the 200s from the previous week. So if you look at the 200s, we did them backstroke, but you know, the athletes came in on their active rest Tuesday. They did some 200s. You know, it was kind of a, for those that sprint, it was kind of a more endurance active rest set. Then they come in the next week on Tuesday, and they're doing something that's a little bit shorter. And for a lot of the athletes, they get into that. Again, it's the psychological balancing for the athletes. Okay, then we go to Wednesday. Now we're going to do kick, drill, swim. We've done the backstroke. We've done the breaststroke. Again, that's a misprint on the second week, should be breaststroke. And then the third week, we're going to do some fly. So the butterfly is going to be a little bit of a different kick, drill, swim set. We got a 150, earn, rest, and then a 50. It's sort of like that first week set where you earn a little bit of rest and then pop something. It's the kind of set that at North Baltimore Aquatic Club we've done for a long time. I know Anita Knoll, who I used to train with in 1992 when she set the world record in the 200 breaststroke. She did a lot of this type of work, and then I feel like we've done it really since that time. Okay, so then moving on to the Thursday aerobic set. Now, having done all these different distances, we're going to take it up a little bit higher. We're going to go 7-400s freestyle. We're going to go back to the freestyle aerobic work, having started the week with backstroke. The next day is a kicking set. We're going to balance out the active rest 50s that we did the previous week with some descending 200s. Now, it's my argument that the 50s, like if you've got somebody that, like on the previous week, let's say they're kicking on their back, they kick a 36, you know, by the, you know, first third of this, by the time the first third of those 2050s are over, they kick a 36. You start motivating them to get down to 34, you know, get under 35. Then by the end of the step, they're kicking some 33s. Okay, let's just say, and for the sake of argument, that's what they're kicking at the end of the step, they're kicking 33s. It's my viewpoint that if the athletes are good enough to get 30 seconds rest on the 6-200s, they probably could start that last one at 33 to the feet on the flip turn for that last 200. And I've seen that happen. I feel like if we don't balance out the distances, where we do some hundreds, do some 50s, and then do some 200s, I feel like the athletes don't have enough speed to get that 200 done. What you're seeing on this screen is all main set stuff. What you're not seeing is the secondary stuff. The stuff that we're doing to finish practice, the things we're doing on the presets. And oftentimes that will have a component of 25 speed, 50 speed that then feeds into the aerobic work and the longer active rest work that we're doing. Okay, so moving on to the Saturday that we've got on the end of the third week. Now we've done backstroke on the first week Saturday, freestyle on the next one. We're coming back to IM. We haven't done IM all week. We've done all of the different strokes. Now we're going to do IM. You might notice that on this sheet there's only, well, how many IM workouts are there? One a week? Well, there's one a week, so there's 4 out of the month. And I say that's pretty typical for the North Baltimore Aquatic Club, but what people don't understand is that that's typical. I feel like what people see when they look at our team, they think about the success that we've had with the IMs. We're the only team that we've had 3 athletes win the 200 and the 400 at the same world championship meet. I don't think there's any other team that's had more than one person do it. It's pretty rare to see one person do it. And so a lot of people think that what we do is we train IM all the time. And that couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, when you look at the 4 IM workouts that we've got, really, I've listed them all as IM, but in truth, we probably do free IM or back breast free IM 70% of the time. I would say that, looking at what Katie Hoff did to set the world record in the 400 IM, I would say it was about 70% non-fly IM, about 30% what we call regular IM. So you got to do the regular IM, but I think if you do enough free IM and back breast free, you're training the backstroke and the breaststroke at a much faster and a much closer level. It's a faster level and it's a closer stroke rate than you're going to get, compared to the racing, than you would get if you just did like 10 400 IMs, right? On number 7, 8, 9, and 10, you're struggling through the butterfly. It's not going to be the same stroke you're going to use on the second 50 of a long course 400 IM. And that's a quick, poppy stroke. It has nothing to do with surviving through. In fact, it's one where you better not be surviving through it. So we do a lot of that. That's a little bit of a tangent, but it does say IM. I would probably have put free IM on there, but I wanted to not have too many questions. If people look at it and kind of look and see what it is, it doesn't really make too much of a difference when you're looking at this sheet. So the Saturday balances everything in terms of the actual stroke that we're doing, and then it kind of balances out the week. We did 200s kicking the previous day, but it's 6 200s, so it's really a 1200. Doing a 200 at the top of a ladder down and having that be the only thing that's fast is a much different style of set, even though it's the same distance. Okay, moving on to the next slide. Okay, so let's fly through the 4th week. The 4th week, the 150s kind of balance everything out on Monday. We've got backstroke balancing out the breaststroke from the previous week. We haven't done backstroke for like 5 or 6 days. And, that's how I think, well, when was the last time we did backstroke? Usually it's like comes through every 5 or 6 days, a change of stroke. That way, we don't do the same thing for every day on the Tuesday active rest, or the same thing on the Wednesday kick drill swim. We can basically keep those variables the same and kind of cycle through the strokes a little bit different. And that way it kind of keeps things the way we want to keep them. Okay, so you go through the breaststroke kick drill swim, the IM set on the end. The IM set on the end of the week there, the Thursday, is like, pretty aerobic set. It's like you do one. That's actually a really great style of set. I'll go through it really quick. It's a Janet Evans style of set. You do 1 on 245 smooth and then 3 strong ones on 230. I'm picturing the athletes going 215 to 220, maybe 210s. Then you do the 2 on 240, but the idea is to stay within a few seconds, let's say 3 to 5 seconds of what you were holding on the right side. Then 2 on 225 faster than the 3 on 230. And then again, when you do the 3 on 235, the interval comes down. You've got to stay honest and stay within, you know, around 5 seconds per 200 of what you were doing on the right side, and then pop one. If you just get sloppy on the left side, you go into, hey, I'm good with earning 3 seconds rest, I'm just going to do whatever. It's not the same kind of a set. It's a great set. Okay, and then Friday, come back with now we're going back to active rest kicking. And then on the Saturday, we can do the typical 3100s every third one fast. Okay, so now we're going to switch the slide. How would we balance this out? Because, you know, if you've got, I'm picturing 6 lanes. Now, I've got 4 lanes or 5 lanes, depending on the day. I feel like some people have that. I think a lot of people have 6 lanes, but it doesn't matter. What I would do is on every day that's not listed here, I would just keep everybody together. And on these days, I would do these types of variations for the different athletes. So I'm not going to go through it. We're going to keep this a little bit quicker than we did the other slides, but these are just some examples of how I might manipulate it. You know, if you get to Saturday, right, and you've got some kids that are good at the mile, right? You got kids that are good at the mile, but you're going to go 8 rounds of a 75 backstroke with some easy stuff in between. I mean, you know, you can do that, but if you've got enough space to get some people to do some distance stuff, do it. You know, if I was doing 3 800s in my pool, I would only do it on the day I had 5 lanes versus 4. And then I would take 2 lanes, not 1. I would take 2 just to be a little bit competitive. And I would probably pick 8 people because I just probably wouldn't want to go 5 deep. It's going to be a mess. It's going to be dangerous, you know. It's going to be a safety issue. And then, you know, my best people probably going to be affected. So I would probably pick, you know, my 4 or 5 best, maybe 6 best milers, put them over there, and then kind of fill it in with people that would make for a good group. You know, so that's an example of how I would do it and why I would do it for that particular week. This is the second week, so there's a couple different times I'd split it up that week. The first week we had 2 times that it was split. Now we're going to go 3 times. And so, like, you know, one of the examples here, if you look at Thursday, that's an example of coming up with a completely different set. Now, if you look at, I think this is the week where on, no, this isn't the week. I'll find it. The next week, there's going to be an example where you can actually keep the group together on the same interval and kind of do a different thing within that. But kind of read through these examples. Again, I'll make sure that everybody gets this PowerPoint and all the stuff that's on it. Okay, so this is an example. If you look at Thursday, take a look at Thursday. So if we're going 7 400s with everybody, you know, one of the things that my group doesn't like is when I go 7 400s and I go a really easy set, you know, in the 1 lane next to them. I mean, I do it sometimes. We've got some good sprinters. I have the discussion with my athletes. I think this is part of it. We are going to split the group. This is what's going to happen. I have had squads where I've had qualification times to qualify for those lanes. Like if you're a female athlete, you don't go 24, male athlete, don't go 21.7. These were the standards I used a few years back with another team that I coached. And like if you didn't have those standards, then you couldn't be in the group at all, so no whining. So anyways, I would do this on a Thursday sometimes. You know, if we're going to go 7 400s with a group of people, then maybe it's going to be 10 400s. Then with the sprint people, I'm going to go 150, hop out. Basically, they can do this like in my pool. I got 4 lanes, so they can do that all like together and then just stop right about when everybody started to get messy in these 5-person lanes. They hop out, make it 4. They get the jump rope and they go 30 on, 30 off a couple times. Hop back in, do it 7 times. Now, I kind of tell the sprinters, like, look, don't eat them up on the first 50. You know, a lot of times those sprinters will get in the back of the lane. If you're going to do that in the same lane with people, that'll happen. So you just tell them, like, look, chill out and go 3 strokes into every turn, no breath, and practice that submerged head turn. And, you know, make that first 150 smooth and get out and make that your real cardio. And, you know, you can do this in a separate 2 lanes. That works as well, works better, it's safer. But if you don't have the space, that's one way that you can do it. Okay, and then the Saturday, that's another example of how it would just be a split group. I split my group pretty often. When I first started doing it, I think people kind of had a bad attitude about it, but we cleared that up pretty quick, and then everybody started swimming fast in all different events, so people started getting it. It takes some discussion, and it just takes discussion with some of your leaders. Okay, so some adjustments for week 4. Monday's another example of how we might do the same interval. This is pretty much what we would do on a Monday. I might have one group of athletes doing the 16 150s and another group of athletes doing the 16 125s. Why would I do that? That's something that I think a lot of coaches ask. I know that, I've gotten heat for that before. I've gotten a lot of heat for that as a coach from people I've worked with. Not currently, but I have gotten heat from coaches I've worked with for taking one lane and having them do this. And my argument, it's not really an argument, it's just the way that it is that when I have a group of sprinters, if they've got to breathe into every turn, and they've got to, come up quick off of the walls relative to not quick off of the walls, they're not doing the same thing that they need to do to swim a good, even 200 at the speeds that we're trying to go. Right now, like in the state of Maryland, we've got, if you go under 140 in the 200 freestyle for the guys, you're definitely good, but you're still not getting to the national level until you go 136, 137, 135. And you've got to go 45 in the 100 to do that. You've got to go 20 point in the 50 to do that. So, I've got a guy that came to my team when he was 14 as a 25 plus long course guy, and I don't even know what he was in the 50. And, he's got terrible streamlines already. What am I going to do? Am I going to put him in? And he's good enough to be in the top group. He's our best sprinter. Psychologically, he's got to be in the top group. So, I put him in I got him to the point where he can do these 125s pretty well and basically hold 112 or 113 on them and go the same speed as the guys going in the 150s. But he's also going full body past the flags off the wall, or maybe not quite for him, but some people are. And he's also doing it with at least the first 2 walls, no breath into the turn. So he's getting some practice with the things he needs to get practice with. And, in some other occasions, I'm basically keeping my sprinters from doing the longer distance freestyle stroke. So you can check, I saw it on SwimSwam. There's a great 10-minute segment with Caleb Dressel being kind of, I don't know if he's being interviewed by Mel Stewart or somehow it's a production, but he's talking about 3 different freestyle strokes. You can also go back in the Hive and look at the video that I did a while back on 3 different freestyle strokes. I didn't start talking about this. I first started learning about this with Coach Bottom from Michigan, who really teaches 3 different freestyle strokes. He's got different names for it. And when I started to learn about what he was teaching, I started working with people on doing that. And I started noticing people like Nathan Adrian, for instance, switching from one stroke to another during races. If you go back and watch, I believe it's his 2012 gold medal 100 freestyle swim. It's beautiful. He swims with certainly a sprint stroke, but it's a breathe every stroke sprint stroke for probably 87 meters. And then he puts his face in and goes no breath into the finish with more of a deep catch. Many people call it straight arm recovery. And I think he's probably pretty straight underwater as well relative to what he was doing before. And he changes his stroke completely. And like you saw on the video to start the Zoom call today with Bruce Hayes and Mikal Gross, Nathan Adrian's stroke switch is really a tempo difference. So he has kind of a Mikal Gross type of stroke, swimming most of the 100, and he switches into Bruce Hayes tempo to finish out with no breath coming into the wall. So if you're not training your freestylers to do 3 different kinds of strokes or 2 different kinds of strokes or whatever it might be, then you're probably going to be missing either distance, sprint, or you might be getting in the middle, but you might be missing one or both of the bookends. or you might be getting only one of the bookends, depending on what you do in practice. So, or what you're teaching the athletes. Okay, so that's basically one slide to go after this. Balancing the next month. So I kind of wrote this up and I was like, oh man, I should have put freestyle on this day and this and that. So these are some of the changes, just looking at it. And some of the things I didn't write down was, well, there's no stroke count stuff in there. I definitely do that. We talked about that all week last week. I definitely do that. The next week I'd probably put that in there as well. But oftentimes that ends up being secondary type training sets that might not actually get written into this type of thing. So I put more freestyle on Tuesdays. Now, this is a big issue. So I took the time to really write this down. So take a look at it. A lot of times what happens is when we're doing the aerobic stuff on Mondays, we have two choices. We can either do freestyle on Tuesday or kind of go away from it. And I think it's probably good to do both. If you have like a distance swimmer, they probably should do a Monday, Tuesday, freestyle, start of the week a lot. In fact, a lot of times my distance swimmers will do that as a tweak. But for the most part, like if I'm coaching IMers, I'm trying to keep them away from swimming freestyle all the time, mainly because I'm concerned about their shoulder health. So we warm down backstroke a lot. We do a lot of backstroke. We do backstroke kicking. Because even when they're doing backstroke kicking, they're going to take a stroke and a half into every turn, and they're going to get their posture to go from, I'm going to look at my screen here, everybody. They're going to go from here to just a little bit more, back in a proper posture position if they're doing enough backstroke to balance out the freestyle. So just as a matter of normal coaching, I'm like weary of that. If I got a distance swimmer, they're doing it, but if I don't, then I got to watch it. And so a lot of times I make the mistake of starting with freestyle on Monday and then not doing enough Tuesday active rest freestyle. That's probably one of my bigger mistakes and one of the things that I was catching myself with. Okay, so then I probably didn't do enough fly for main sets in this particular month. So coming back to next month, I build off some of these fly sets, do some hundreds, do some 75s. And, there's probably not enough breaststroke work in general here, unless I really did a lot on the secondary sets and that type of thing. So we tend to do that. Okay, so I'm going to go off of the share screen now. I hope everybody got something out of that. At our team, we pride ourselves, and we've done a great job with getting the most out of all kinds of different athletes. We don't want to be the type of squad, and I think a lot of people will agree with this. There's nobody as a coach that likes this, but some people I think get caught up in it, where you're like thinking about just like a small portion of your crew. I mean, how many people have been to the meet? I've been to a meet, and I'm gonna be the first person to raise my hand, where the kid comes over after the first event. And this happens a lot in December, right? Because for me, I go through in October. We don't really race that much. Then I go to a November meet, and it's crazy. There's a ton of kids. A lot of times, those kids are all coming over to the coach at the same time, or they're going to warm down, not coming over at all, right? Because it's really local, right, compared to everything else. So what happens is, for me, this is what I'm raising my hand for. Kids come over and I'm like, I hardly know you, like I don't really even have a goal for what you should really be doing in this event. And so I think that's a good thing, because if I catch myself doing it, then the kid ends up having a great spring, and I do that. I coach the kid for 3 years, and that's 3 months of time. Then that's cool. It's a problem if that happens for 1.5 years straight. So I think we got to be real with ourselves. That's the way that it goes. But I've caught myself enough feeling like that, where I'm like, I can't have that happen. So I'm going to make sure that everybody gets some love. And the way that I do things, the way that I just showed you guys kind of the way that I like to do things, a lot of times the athletes will have a little bit of mental rest on a certain day when they're really working at it on another day. And the mental rest part, they can still train hard. They can still go fast. You know, you telling me your distance swimmers, when they're given some 75s active rest, you telling me they're not going to work that hard? You know, they're going to work that real hard and get a lot out of it. And my opinion is they're going to really get that kind of rest of their strong stuff so that when you come back to it the next day, they're a little fresher. I think too many coaches probably do the same thing. I'm not accusing anybody here of this, you know, but like too many coaches in the world of swimming do the same sorts of thing, you know, throughout the week and not be really thinking about the different distances and manipulating those things. We manipulate the strokes, but do we manipulate the distances, and do we manipulate the distances within the type of work? So it's one thing to manipulate the distances, but do you manipulate it within the active rest work, not just the stroke overall? So if you're just manipulating it within the aerobic work, but not doing it within the faster active rest work, then that's an issue also. So anyways, I had fun putting this thing together, and I hope everybody got a lot out of it. What questions might people have about certain things within this, or thoughts? Going off in the chat. Anybody have anything to say initially?
Yeah, Paul, I just threw 3 in the chat when you get a chance to get to them.
Sure. Okay. So let's see. Explain the technique. Okay, great. So Fridays, there's actually a lot that I left off of the Fridays. The Fridays, if I'm doing a really good job, I will teach. I will warm them up, and I'll spend 15 minutes, and I'll get them good at something. And so basically that's me like being a good lesson planner and scheduling in for myself technique work. So I might do technique work in a number of different ways, but I'll basically schedule that out. We'll do some 25s, we'll work on some stuff, we'll float in the middle of the pool, do that sort of thing. Then, and really a lot of times that, for instance, if you look at on the first week, it's technique breaststroke. And then I would think about how that would feed into the second week, Wednesday breaststroke set. And then we do technique on the Friday on the second week, and that would feed into the kick drill swim Wednesday fly set, that kind of thing. So then as far as like the placement before the kicking set, I would do the drill before the kicking set for sure, because they're going to be so tired after the kicking. And not only that, a lot of times they're going to be kicking with a kickboard and their arms are going to be like this for 15 or 20 minutes. So I feel like I'm going to warm them up, then I'm going to do some stroke stuff. I might put some, if I'm doing a really good job, I might design the warm up where we go like, let's say we go 300 swim, and then we go 825s drill. Well, let's say we do like more like 150 swim, 825s drill, and we go around like 3 times. We work on 3 different drills, and then after that, I'll take 10 to 15 minutes and really work on the stroke, having done those drills well to kind of warm it up. So that's a definite strategy to kind of link the warm up into that. And then so that really takes care of that aspect of your question, Jim. But the other thing that I left out on Fridays is, let's say every other week, certainly every third week, probably every other week, we go 6 or 7, we go like 750s mix on 50, get out and in groups dive a 50, and they just choose their stroke and they race and that kind of thing. And they just, I don't even tell them where to go. They just kind of line up, ready to go, guys against girls, whatever. And, we do that like every other week. I learned that from Coach Bowman. They did that all the time. I think that the theme would be like speed at the end of the week and also speed at the end of the kicking set. I would say that this schedule, aside from the Wednesday, I feel really confident that this is not only like the way that I do things, but this is pretty much what I watched Michael Phelps do when he was 16, 17. I'm not as confident on the Wednesdays, but I'm pretty comfortable with the rest of it. Although he did there was a lot of breaststroke that happened on Mondays. So I feel like sometimes the Monday and Tuesday were switched at times. I feel like that was a psychological thing. Michael's weakest stroke at that time was breaststroke by far. And Bob really made it a point to really get that work in. And I think Michael was really into working on breaststroke. And so he put it at the beginning of the week, and it was kind of like, check, got one day, You know, he kicked him and pulled him in the morning on Monday, came in, did some breaststroke, check, got that day. And then he probably did active rest or IM on Tuesdays a lot. I don't remember exactly the details of that. But I do know that generally speaking, this is Coach Bowman's plan. Okay, so then the second thing, how far in advance you plan this? This is something that I probably would plan kind of like this, like a month at a time, a lot when I was in my 20s, in my first 10 years of coaching. In my second 10 years of coaching, I planned it a lot less, in part because I have kids and I just didn't have time to like really sit down and map it out, but also in part because I started writing things on a computer, doing things like that. So there's advantages either way. I like the layout of like graph paper and doing it like this, but I also like being able to just cut and paste. You know, there was a point in time where I was like, I actually have like, you know, documents where it's like all warm-ups. And so I don't use it as much as I should, but there's a point where I was like, why do I keep writing all these warm-ups? You know, I should just have like 12 of them that I use to cut and paste. But that's a little bit more of a pain than I considered it to be. So right now, just having had to practice with it and kind of knowing the plan, I just roll with it kind of week to week. Not only that, but my athletes I have so many different types of athletes, and I'm just constantly trying to balance them out. It's a really tough job, I think, to do this well. Okay, and then energy system focus on the pace days. Yeah, for sure I worry about the energy systems, but I just think about it like, you know, it's interesting. I remember back in like 2003 and 4 and 5, 2006, USA Swimming would do would test the ears of the athletes and get lactic acid millimole readouts. And we would like basically learn about our athletes and what those numbers meant for our athletes. Not only that, this is wild stuff. I don't know if anybody can remember this, but you could get on the USA Swimming website and access the lactic acid profiles of all of the swimmers in the United States. So not only could I access my athletes' last 10 races and what the lactate was and how quickly she recovered. There was 2 athletes that I was coaching on a daily basis that were getting their ear pricked at these meets. And then I would notice Michael's stuff as well, because I would talk with Bob about it. And I'd see him back there, you know. All the stuff was so out in the open. You could see people's readings and that kind of thing. And I mean, I would use them, you know. I would, in my mind, if somebody, like, for instance, what Katie Hoff was able to do was, when she was a younger swimmer, she, as well as Courtney Kalish, another young swimmer at the time that was swimming fast, their millimole readings were in the 13s. I mean, 13 is super, super high. They couldn't recover it very fast either. They would like drop it down to something like I forget exactly, but like a 7 or an 8. And the USA Swim people would say, get back in the water and warm down. So we started to do a better job with aerobic training, and just they grew up too. It just got better. I think they got mentally stronger, each of them in different ways. Well, particular Katie, I would say, got mentally really strong, was able to handle the psychological aspects of a hard aerobic endurance set. And so what ended up happening was, what I noticed was, she would still be able to get her millimoles readings pretty far up there, maybe not to a 13, but like maybe to a 10 or a 9 high or something like that. But then she would drop it down to the necessary, I think it was 2.5 or under, to get out of the warm down pool pretty quickly. And you could see on the USA Swimming database how quickly people would recover, where they would start at. And if you knew that somebody who had a penchant for spiking their lactate, and you know, the swimmer that you coach took it out fast to kind of help them do that, then, you know, you knew more than everybody else. So I think it was pretty weird that USA Swimming put that out there for everybody to see, not only on the deck, but on the actual website. I feel like that probably got taken down around 2006 or 2005. It wasn't up there for that long. But to go back to the question, what I started to notice, in particular with Katie, because Katie was super consistent. I mean, I would say out of 365-day year, she trained 355 days, and then so she's training 430 sometimes. And I would say that out of 430, she didn't have 30 bad workouts. She might have had 10. So, and we balanced everything out. So like it was like a game. She was so consistent with practice and so consistent with what she was doing. I learned that, like, Jim, to your point, do I worry about energy systems? Oh yeah, because if for her, a lot of it was psychological as well. If she did some great 300s, I wouldn't come back to that the next week. I'd let her sit, get better at some other stuff, and then come back a month later. But just, in terms of kind of losing my train of thought with the psychological part, in terms of the physical part, I would think the same way. I would actually print out, here's a month of your training, like on a line, columns or lines that would have like basically what you did that day, and then what you did the next day, what you did the next day. And I'd give it to her after a month, and she'd look at it like, wow, I'm amazing. I just did this amazing month of training. And so I wanted her to see, okay, here's some great 200s free, here's some great 100s, here's some great 50s. Then you did some great 400s, that kind of thing. So this, thing that I've showed everybody today is really developed because I wanted people to balance out and see not only physically, but psychologically, like, did this, okay, cool. Now I'm doing this, awesome. Now I got that. So that's kind of how I learned how to balance out those particular things. And then what I learned was Katie actually one time at the Olympic camp in 2004 got her ear pricked in the middle of practice. And we're doing a set that I actually started to put away because I did a much better job with aerobic red pace training. We did so much active rest to start her time with me. I would say we did 5 out of 7 days active rest when we first started working together. And then it evolved into what you see. But, what we did back at that point in time was probably swim fast a lot more than we should have. And she got her lactate tested during a set of 15 200s, every 5th one fast IM. And she was at 11 high millimoles at the end of that, almost out of like a racing thing. And she did well on the set, and the set was designed for like 3 200s. So the lactate's going to be pretty high compared to another type of set. But I started to figure out, like, man, I am taxing this girl. And she, like, how can she even do this? And like, I don't even know how other people could do this. So I started to watch it a little bit. Once I like started to realize, like, not only does she bring that lactate up real high in racing, she's doing that in training. And so I started to look at her when she was swimming and sort of basically make an assessment on where I thought she was. It was almost like, it was like every time I watched her swim at practice, I'd have in my mind, I mean, we talked about lactate, if we knew anything about it or not. I'm learning more about the Cori cycle. I think that has a little bit more with to do with what I'm actually talking about. And I'm trying to get really good at explaining right now, not right now, but like this month, why I like to do the types of things that I like to do with the athletes, why they work. Because for so long, I like look at my athlete and I see like almost like just a gauge of like, okay, lactate's about, it's nothing, we're just working aerobic. Or it's up there, I gotta watch it, let's warm down. Or it's kind of in the middle. And then what are we gonna do while it's in there? And that's another video for another day. We've talked a little bit about percolator sets. I feel like those have a little bit to do with the Cori cycle. If there's people that know more about this type of thing than I do, I've got other people that are helping me out with this and looking at it because I know why I do what I do. But the scientific explanation in terms of, why something might go from the bloodstream into a kidney, and what happens in a kidney, like that's not my area of expertise. So it's something actually during the quarantine that I'm trying to gain expertise on. But for years, I've just watched my athletes and kind of like figured on, how much of that they're dealing with, how much of that, whether it be lactate or lactic acid, whichever, I think it's lactate, how much of that they're actually dealing with, and how can I actually get them to cycle that through and to, maybe create more fuel. So, and that's really what, as I researched the Cori cycle, that's all about. So there's some homework for everybody. I know it's kind of been a little bit of my homework. I know that the coach that I work with every day is working on her strength and conditioning certification, and we've been going back and forth a little bit on text about this particular thing. So check it out. I mean, I think as coaches, we come to it, like I'm an English major, we come to it from all these different backgrounds, and I think the best thing that we can do is watch our athletes and watch how they react to different things that we do. And like we talked about last week, go through some kind of a scientific method where we're kind of predicting and hypothesizing, seeing what happens, and then going through it again and again. Okay, so Tom, I'm going to go to the next one here that you wrote up. So thank you for that. And would the monthly plan change by year? So it's a really good question. I mean, I think it would, but I think it's all based off the athletes. So like every year I lose, like the last year, starting this particular fall, I was coming in off of losing almost my entire junior national team. And so we had to kind of build it, and all these different events and all these different kids coming into the group. It was a huge influx. We probably had an influx of over 50% new kids in the top group. So in that situation, we're going to change it just because of that. I think if we had an influx of 20% or less, then I think if it had been kind of working and things have been going well, then I think we keep a little the same, we tweak a little bit here and there, and we kind of do it like that. Does that make sense, Tom?
Yeah, I think that sounds good. If you had, let's say you had the same kids all 4 years, and it was an Olympic year, would you do anything differently with that kind of monthly plan?
I think that the Olympic year would be a year where I would go for health over everything. So what the major change in the Olympic year in that particular situation, and that does happen a lot, like if you have a pro group or if you've got, obviously the better the athletes and the older the athletes, maybe the combination of the two, the more apt you are to have this thing. So the year of the Olympic trials and the Olympics, I would go for health over everything. How would that manifest? Well, I'd make sure that I did probably more mid-range aerobic work, like red pace, if you're familiar with that terminology, then blue pace, and the harder, shorter rest work. I will have done that in the previous year. So that's kind of how I think about that for not only the last year, but the year before. And so that's one way I'd think about it. I'd probably do the same kind of thing with the strength and conditioning. I wouldn't try anything new. With the taper plan and that sort of thing, I wouldn't try anything new. Now, in contrast, year 2, I would try something new. Year 2, I would do year 1. I would see what I did year 1, kind of what worked. I would probably throw some stuff in there just to kind of see what happens based off of what the athletes that I've got. And then just by default, it's kind of like the NFL draft. It's like you make some draft picks and then some people got to leave. So there's going to be some stuff that I'm probably just like, all right, we're probably not going to do as much fly kicking on the back. We're going to do more stroke count work. So I do that on year 2 more so than I would do on the last year. And then depending on the age of the athlete, maybe do a little bit more of that on the 3rd year. If you've got athletes if you've got an athlete like Katie Ledecky, maybe you don't do anything different on the 3rd year. Just sail on in there. If you've got an athlete that, maybe isn't going to make any cuts, let's say you don't have a team with cuts. Like I know that I remember back when we used to get the ASCA newsletter like every month or something like that. And it was like probably in the 90s where some coach wrote an article. It was like, look, I have no trial qualifiers. We have like a year to go. So what did I do? We went 10 grand every workout. We went 100 grand for like 3 weeks in a row, like 3 times. And we had 5 people make the 400 IM cut. And it was great. It's like, heck yeah. So that coach was like, shoot, I'm 9 months out. The last year, I got to change something to make something happen. I think a lot can happen in a year. So if you've got young athletes like, 14, 15, 16-year-olds, We see it. I think traditionally we've seen a lot on the women's side, but we definitely see it on the guys' side as well. It's like they make huge progress in like 1 year. People are dropping like 10 seconds in a long course 200 from like a sectional finalist to like now you're in the B final at Olympic trials, that kind of thing. So
I was going to say the balance of the plan looks really great, and if you had an athlete that attended, 100%, I would think that they could get in shape relatively quickly. Do you feel like they're ready to go after, say, a month or 6 weeks and ready, like really good place to be for the rest of the year?
Yeah, the only people I've had trouble with this particular plan are distance swimmers. And distance swimmers, I just got to tweak the heck out of them. It's the only people I've had trouble with. So that's why it's really a big reason why I put the tweaks up there. But yeah, I mean, for me, if I've got, when I coached at T2 in Florida and I coached mainly the older kids, I realize we're running right into 3:00 time. I won't feel bad if anybody drops out. I know we got people that are going to another Zoom meeting. But I had people that were like in the age group, and I coached them 1 day a week. And so I only had them for 1 day a week. And I was like, what do I do? If I got 1 day a week, what is it I can really teach them? I did the kick drill swim style sets with them almost every time. The active rest sets just becomes more of like a lifting the car off a small child for some of those younger kids. Like these were like 12, 13-year-old, pretty good kids, pretty good, like AAA, quad A swimmers. So relative to kick drill swim, the active rest stuff I felt like was so hard. And I did some cardio aerobic stuff just really to like show them that they could do a good job with it and kind of like get them to do a good job without being scared of doing some good cardio stuff. But I pretty much picked the kick drill swim stuff. If anybody has not seen, I did I did like a 10-minute session with a kid one time during practice, sort of impromptu. It was a great teaching thing. I'm going to look back on Slack. In fact, what I'll do is I'll repost it. If you haven't seen it, check it out. But this is how I work through a kick drill swim set with athletes, in particular with sort of a stroke count aspect of it. So, Tom, if I had to pick one thing, and I think that kind of in that will answer your question, those kick drill swim sets are the ways that athletes can really progress through training. If you take a look at the YouTube clip that I'll post today, you see how I'm working through with this one particular athlete. By the way, I emailed that to the parent and the kid, and I got an email receipt of, yes, I can use this in the future to teach people, because I was just starting to work with coaches at that point in time. So I've kind of got the go-ahead from this 14-year-old kid's dad. But you'll see kind of how I work through like a 10-minute time period getting this kid better at this stuff. And I feel like, to answer your question, after a month, yeah, I feel like they can get better. But after 2 months, they're going to get a lot better. Because when you think about it, it's only 4 IM workouts. It's 3 breaststroke practices. It's 3 fly practices, maybe not even that. So doing it for 2, 3, 4 months in a row, I think is really when you can see some results. I think it's, honestly, you're going to get better results in the spring every time than December with this particular thing. Because, by the time you get to December, you're going to have how many active rest freestyle sets in your back pocket? 7, right? Maybe 8. Well, by the time you get to February 15th, you're going to have 12 or 14 of them. And the list goes on for everything: kicking sets, fly sets, and so on. So, okay. Thanks, everybody. Again, this is the second week in a row that we've done this type of thing. I'd like to make a quick announcement about the lane calls and what we're going to be doing over the next month with these calls. First off, I'm open for a lot of suggestions. Like, what is it everybody wants to hear? You can shout it out. You can write in the chat. You can contact me on Slack. But what kinds of things do people want to hear? I want to know that. I'll open that up in a second. The second thing is the lane calls next week won't be on Monday and Tuesday. I'm going to get with Steph, who works with Chris and I at Ritter Sports Performance, and she's going to schedule it for either next Thursday or next Thursday and Friday. And then we're going to do these full calls every other week starting this week, and then we're going to skip a week and then come back the next probably Thursday after that. But I'll get that a little more buttoned up and get that out to you. We're not going to do the every single week again for this month, just to be clear with everybody.